As some of you may know, Magnusson Analytica is active on the Amplitude community, whether it's hosting webinars and workshops or answering questions that users have got on the Slack channel. Now, one of the questions from Vin Din today was really interesting, and we thought that we could actually do a full run through of how we would tackle this problem from start to finish, going from the inception and the idea to actually building out the dashboard right at the very end. So today, let's have a look through how we can use the CURR framework from Duolingo to understand the life cycle of an application's users. So once again, thank you, Vin Din, for the question on the Amplitude Slack channel. So you can see here, I was looking at Duolingo's CURR model and was wondering whether this is something that can be tracked with Amplitude. Anyone tracking users based on states and their state transitions, users moving from engaged to disengaged, for example. If there are any blog posts on related topics, please send them my way. So I found this really interesting because we do this with a lot of different clients that we have. Now, we've done something very similar to this with Brainly about 4 or 5 years ago. Funnily enough, not actually with Amplitude. This was just before we actually implemented Amplitude in Brainly. We're actually running this straight out of Amazon Redshift. But yeah, we've done it also with Amplitude itself. You can see here, and we'll go into a little bit more detail in a second when we take a look, but this is all to try and understand the life cycle of different users and the states that they are in. So whether someone is a new user, whether they are current and they're sort of active, whether they're potentially at risk of churning, whether they're, and this is a bit of a morbid name, but whether they're dead users, and then whether or not we can resurrect them back and get them back into sort of an active state. So yeah, super interesting. And there's definitely some shortcuts within Amplitude straight away where we can see some of this information anyway. But let's actually go through, because I think this will be a really fun example to actually see how we would build something like this in Magnusson Analytica. So first things first, let's take a look at the CURR model itself. So I did see that they've got this within the blog back from 2023. And if we scroll through here, we can see kind of that chart that we were taking a look at here. We can see the new users. As a user goes from being new and then they're starting to use the application, they turn into a current user, and hopefully they're just cycling through that. Obviously, at some point, they might become a user that we identify as being at risk within that week. As they go through that a couple of stages, they'll then become at risk within the month. And then finally, after they've done that a couple of times, we will then call them dormant, or in the other screenshot I saw dead. We generally would say dormant. Now, from any of these stages, they can come back to being active. Okay, so either we can reactivate those at-risk users, or we can resurrect those users that we thought that we lost. Okay, and once they're then resurrected, they can then come back into being a current state. So yeah, really like this model, really like what Duolingo has done here, made it very clear. We'll go through these specific user states and then we'll start to define those. Definitely something that we see a lot here at Magnusson Analytica. One of the industry vectors that we concentrate on a lot is the education sector. So we've done work with Brainly, as I mentioned. We've done work with other language sites as well. Myself, I've got what's my streak at the moment on Duolingo? So I've got a 353 streak here on Duolingo. So yeah, anyone from Duolingo that's listening, kudos to you on the product itself, and definitely up for having a chat around this life cycle model that you've built here and doing this directly within Amplitude. So yeah, let's take a look. So there are 7 mutually exclusive user states within this section here. So the first one obviously being the new users. So these are the learners who are experiencing Duolingo for the first time ever. So that's this purple section here. So that's generally the very first day with the very first session. Okay. Then we've got the current users. Those are the users that are active today, but they were also active at some point within the past week. So perhaps they were active on Monday and then they're active on Wednesday, or they were active on Monday and they're active on Tuesday. Okay. So they're not brand new, but they are active and they are current and they are coming back. They're probably those people that are on the streaks, right? The next thing that we have is the reactivated users. So these are, again, learners who are active today, and they were also active at some point in the last month, but they were not active in the past week. Okay, so they were active on the 1st of May, and now they're active again on the 13th of May, but they weren't active in the last 7 days, okay, in the most recent 7 days. So that's these reactivated users in here, okay, those that were slightly at risk, and then we brought them back across into being current again. Okay. One thing just to note out, and again, this is something that we see with a lot of our clients in the educational space, they don't mention so much around active users. We actually talk about learners quite frequently. So an active user might be coming onto the platform and just navigating around, changing some things in their settings, maybe taking a look at some of the courses. But what we actually want to understand is how many of those users become learners, because that's when we're actually driving the value to those users, is when they are actually learning something. Okay, so at Brainly, for example, we developed those users who are learners are those that are reading an answer for a certain amount of time on a page, again, calculated by sort of the average rate that users are reading word by words, that kind of word count piece, multiplying that out by the number of words within an answer, and then working out the amount of time that they're spending on that page as a sort of proxy for understanding whether or not a user has read that answer itself. Okay. But anyway, back to these user states. The next one that we've got here is the resurrected users. So active today, but they were active more than a month ago. So similar to the reactivated, but these users were much more dormant. Okay, we actually thought that we potentially have lost them because they haven't been active for at least a month. Now we've got the states that are just before these sort of reactivation and resurrection states. So the at-risk weekly and the at-risk monthly. So those users who have been active, but not today. So within the past week, but not today. And then those who were active within the past month, but not in the past week. Okay. And then finally, we have those dormant users. So those are the ones that have been active for at least 30 days. Those are the users that typically people start to write off. But you can see, obviously, there is that resurrection rate. There is this focus at the moment with a lot of the re-engagement strategies that different companies can use to actually see around resurrecting those dormant users themselves. Okay. So the first thing that we can do within Amplitude, and this will depend on the type of Amplitude subscription that you've got, but if you come through and you have a look at the additional chart types, you will see a Lifecycle section here. And you can actually see already it says break down your user base by new, current, resurrected, and dormant users. Okay, so it's not quite everything within this blog from Duolingo, but it definitely does show us the current users. So that's that current user state there, those that are active now, but were also active in the prior period. New users, so brand new to the platform. Resurrected, so those that were dormant and they've now come back. And then also your dormant users. Okay. So slightly different definition, because these, for example, the current users are current within each subsequent period, as opposed to kind of taking a look at this, it's called active in the past week or so. Okay, this was active this week and active last week. You can obviously adjust those usage intervals if you want. But so that gives a pretty decent first view. We can obviously pull this out into a longer time period and have a look at the growth rates. So we can see the fluctuations on the current usage. We can also see a couple of spikes coming through on the dormant users, for example, as well. But we really want to dive a little bit deeper into this, and we want to build out a whole dashboard that's going to be able to answer these questions that we've got here. And let's see how quickly we can get through this in one live video. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is we need to design the cohorts that are going to sit within this. So I am going to, actually, let's firstly, we want to make this a little bit organized. So let's make this within my space, and we are going to call this the CURR. Again, I call this CURR. I'm not going to name that out for anyone any of my Romanian listeners, that will probably sound a little bit rude. And I think for quite a lot of other languages as well. But I'm not the linguist here. Duolingo is. So maybe they actually thought of that when they were thinking of that name. Anyway, so let's go in and let's start creating the cohorts. So the first one that we are going to want to do, and I'm going to define my own here just to be very specific. And we are going to go for, and let's make this nice and easy. So we're going to say had been new. Actually, no, we're not going to do that because we'll use the had been new within the chart directly. So new users we're not going to do because we're going to take that directly from, if I created a chart, for example, here, we could do, and we're just going to do active events for now, but we could take a look at our new users directly within here. Okay. Maybe we want to say, maybe we will define that actually during the last one day, just to say that they were new users. Okay. Because if we're doing it directly within the segment by section here, then as soon as we start adding in our other cohorts, it's going to get a little bit tricky because it's going to try and segment everyone by new users. If anyone else has thought of another way that you can do this within Amplitude, it's one of the things that has been a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, that you can't do new versus old or active users directly within here. You've got to do either new or active. So let's do this as a cohort. So we've got new users. We've got 11,000 or so new users. So I'm going to save that down as CURR new users. Okay, and I will save that within this folder. And there we go. First cohort done. Next one then, current users. So learners active today who are also active in the past week. So again, we're going to go and create a new cohort, define my own, someone who performed. And again, we won't go for specifically learners in this instance. We're just going to go for active users. So any active event with a count at least once during the last one day, because we know that they had to be active today, but who were also active in the past week. So anytime in the last day, and an event did perform any active event during the last week. So we want the last 6 days, but offset by 1 day. So you'll see what just happened with the date picker. Here we are on the kind of the 12th to the 13th, 12th actually with the time zone difference. And we want to have a look at the last week's worth of data, except for today. Okay, because we've already taken a look, if I close this down, we've already taken a look at whether or not they were active today or within the last 24 hours, right? So the next thing that we want to do is we want to add in that offset by 1 day. So we pull everything back by 1 within this date range picker. And we have a look at the last 6 days, except for yesterday. Okay, or except for the last 24 hours or so. Okay, so we'll hit apply. That says that they must have been active today, and they must have also been active at some point in the current period of the last week. So again, we can save that down, and this is our current users. I hope I saved that in the right space. Yep, CURR, perfect. Okay, so current users is done. Reactivated users, that is the next one that we need to do. So learners active today who were also active in the past month, but not in the past week. So let's go through. We can actually say, we'll do a copy of this and we'll say not resurrected. This is reactivated. And I'm losing my naming conventions here. I should be adding that at the beginning, just so I know to pull that through. We want to say it did not perform in the last 7 days. So the same as the current, but we're just doing the inverse. So they were active today, but they weren't active in the last week. And we need to specify that they were active in the last month, except for the last week. Okay, so that will be the last, what will that be? we want to offset that by 7 or 8, sorry. Offset that by 8 so that we ignore the last week. And then we'll need to pull it back by those 8, so 20 in the last 22 days, so that we get back to the 12th. Perfect. So now we've got the month is from the 12th going back to the 12th. We have the current day is the 12th of May. So whether they were active today, we said yes in the first section. Then the previous 6 days for the last week. Again, if you want to do 6 or 7 days, it's completely up to you. Just make sure that you're consistent with everything that you're doing. So I'm going for the 11th, 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, and 5th. They didn't do. That's my did not perform. And then the kind of 3 weeks or so prior to that with my offsets that they were active. So if I hit apply on that, you can see that they were active in that time period. Okay, so that is my reactivated users. I'm going to save that down. Get all of these reminders. I keep forgetting to close those. There we go. And another one. And now we can go through to our resurrected users, and we're nearly halfway through already just creating the cohorts themselves. Obviously, if you're starting to get an idea about how to do this and you're comfortable with creating cohorts, then you can kind of skip through this section and take a look at some of the charts that we're then going to be creating after this. So resurrected users, and this will be active today and who are active more than 30 days ago. So if we save this down, we will then take the last, instead of this, we will go for the last 28 days. Sorry, 29. What about? There we go. And then here we'll go for the biggest range that we can within Amplitude, which is 365 days. And then again, offset that by the 29. And then just double check where that is finishing off. Yeah, I thought so. We want to go for 30 because we've got 29 in the did not. So then we do from the 30 here. Okay, so just a really quick walkthrough of what we've done here. Active event today. So they are active today. They have been resurrected. They did not perform any event in the last month. So in the last 30 days, but ignoring today. So that's the last 29 days offset by 1. And then from those 30 days prior to today, we then want to look back at the previous year to see if they were active at any point then as well. Okay. The other way that we could do that actually, which would be quite nuanced, maybe cleaner, would be that they were active today, they were not active in the last 29 days offset by 1, and they were not a new user. Then if there's anyone past that 365 days, then you'll pick those users up as well. So those are highly, highly resurrected, right? So they were active 2 years ago and now they're back again. So maybe we'll do that. That's going to be a little bit nicer. And so they are not part of a specific cohort, and we will find our new users one. See, and it's lovely that I put the CURR. That helps a lot. Okay, perfect. Save that one down. I will go through and clean up those names in a second because that's going to drive me crazy. Right, so then at-risk weekly active users, users who had been active within the past week, but not today. So now if we go back and we take a look, and this is where we should be able to speed things up a little bit. If we go into my space, I'm just going to clean up these names whilst we're here. Just a stickler for naming conventions. When you've done more than 30 Amplitude implementations and you have to go through taxonomies and make sure that everything is in line, these sorts of things niggle in the back of your mind as you're going through. Cool, perfect. Right, so we are here, and this is exactly where we want to be. We will copy this. And we are going to say at risk WAU, right? Yep, so at risk weekly active users. Save that down, and then we're going to just basically reverse this. So we're going to say that they did perform that action in the last 6 days, offset by 1. Okay, so they were active at some point in this date range, for example, and that's today's date. And then we are going to say did not perform during the last, remove the offset, and then just in the last day. Now, what I haven't done is I haven't checked the user counts on these. Obviously, this is in a demo environment, so it's going to be interesting when we actually make these charts, but we'll take a look as we're going through. So save that one down. That is good. Now we are going to, oh my goodness, all these pop-ups. Then we're going to copy this one and then change this to your monthly active user at risk cohort. And so the at-risk monthly ones are those learners who are active within the past month, but not in the past week. So here again, we can say active within, and we're going to change this to within the last 22, offset by 7. So yeah, last 23, offset by 7. I guess that's to the 30 days. Okay. I think actually I'm going to take this to 22 and then offset by 8 because it's going to align with the resurrected piece that we did. Okay, and then we're actually going to say did not perform at all in the last 7 days. Okay, and then this is a little bit clearer. That's it within the past full week, right? So that will make a little bit more sense. Save that down. I should really technically change the WAU one as well, the weekly active users, but we'll keep it like this for now. And then we're going to go for the dormant users. So users who have been inactive for at least 30 days. So this one I'm going to create new. And these are users who did perform. See, this is the issue here because we're not going to be able to straight away do a did not perform. So we can either, and if anyone's got any ideas or comments, please put them in the comment section after this as well. I'd be really interested to hear your ideas. So we'll do actually, you can do within the last 365 and then offset by the last 30. And I think that's a fairly safe way initially to say that these are your dormant users. Anyone who is dormant for more than a year, you probably are not aiming to actually analyze them right now, or at least not directly within Amplitude. You're probably going to be wanting to do that within another platform like a Braze or an Iterable or a HubSpot or a Klaviyo, for example, to try and pull those users back in. Okay, so I'm actually going to save that down for now and call those my dormant users. Go on, just have a quick look. And again, CURR, dormant users, thank you. Okay, and we do have the 3.3 million users within there. I'm curious if there's anything else that we could potentially do. So if we go in here, we could actually, not propensity, I wanted to do, had a property. No, that's still going to pass that through. Maybe if we did, for example, you could just do had a property that wasn't none anytime in the last 30 days, and then you would do that they did not perform within the last 30 days, any event. Okay, now that would technically be those users, right? So they would still have a user profile existing within Amplitude, which would then be kind of good to go. So I'd select that as none, so it wasn't none, so they had some. No, they didn't seem to like that. So I think the user property has to be at the same time that the event is fired, unfortunately. I thought that might have been a little bit of a sneaky hack that we could have done. But never mind. At least now, if we take a look back, we have our cohorts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cohorts out of the 7 that we have created within here. Now let's think about a little bit of an analysis that we would want to be doing with these. So the first thing that we would do, let's actually just go ahead and make the dashboard itself. So we're going to call this our CURR media streaming dashboard, for example. Okay, perfect. So the first thing that we can do is let's actually add some existing content. And we might as well actually add some summaries of who is within each of these sections. All right, so if we take a look at this, they're kind of saying that where was it that they said this? They are taking a look at this kind of updated on a daily basis, for example. And we were doing a very similar thing in Brainly as well. On a daily basis, maybe is a bit extreme. We were definitely checking this on a weekly. Just to see like who is a current user on average on any given week. So here we can see that we've got nearly 300,000 current users coming through. If I go through and I add some more content, then maybe some of the other more interesting ones as well that we've got here. So we've got the new users. Then we want new users first. So let's think about this as a journey. So it's new users first, then it's your current users. Then let's add some more content and we'll want the at risk WAU. Okay, the at risk WAU then becomes your at risk MAU. Then we want to see where our strategy, and actually these can all go into the same column, row rather, not column. Then we can take a look at the reactivated, then the resurrected, and then the dormant coming through. And you can see there, we didn't check those numbers, but yeah, we've only got one reactivated user and 0 resurrected within our demo environment here within Amplitudes. So Amplitudes clearly doesn't have a braze or an iterable or anything like that to try and bring users back in because the retention rate there is looking pretty low. Speaking of retention rate, that's probably another thing that we would want to add in. So let's just add in that chart as it is, just to show how quick and easy that is to do. So I just went to create a new chart, selected retention, and then take a look at the retention rate. And there we've got that coming through. So we'll take a look at that for the last 30 days. And we're just going to call this new user retention. Save that down. Save that down within our folder. We like to make sure that everything is folded and nice and clear. That should in fact have added to the dashboard, but let's just make sure. There we go. Perfect, brilliant. So next thing that we might want to do is we might want to take a look at some of these over time. That's maybe a little bit better than the numbers that we can't see now because they're not loading up. That's just the timings coming through. But if we take a look at this through time, maybe because I put a few too many through. There we go. So now we can actually see the trends of how these different cohorts are adjusting over time. There we go. We can see our current user base coming through, very steady there at around about 300,000. We have a group of at-risk users coming across. And then again, a fairly steady at-risk MAU. Now, our dormant users is probably another interesting one. This should be fairly steady. In fact, this is blocked because it's a duration more than 101 days. So maybe we'll just hack that back down. Let's just do a 90-day dormancy for now, just for this chart. Okay, save that, refresh this. Still doesn't like that. Cohort population is blocked for duration more than 101 days. 131 day duration. That should have updated. It's not 131 anymore. If we drop that down to 60, we should be more than okay for this. Let's create this as a chart just to double check. Mhm. Okay, so that does look to be working now. There we go. And there's our dormant state coming through. So a little bit there on the blockers that we might have when it comes to at least the population over time. So we could see that as an overall total number if we take the dormancy to a wider range. But otherwise, looking at the last 60 days or the last 90 days would be more than reasonable, really, to take a look at how many dormant users that you have. You have the new retention rates coming through. We could obviously then take a look at the conversion rates of users as they're going through different states. So how many of them are actually going through the resurrections. So you could actually just build funnel charts directly. If I add a new chart in here, we could go for your active events as a funnel. You would want to have a look at your learning rates. So let's say your actually let's do our learning rates, and it's not learners, it's play song or video in this specific instance because it's a music streaming app. And then we could actually group by, and then let's go by the we'll filter by the cohort, and then you can add multiple all within the same chart as well. So we'll put our new users in there, duplicate that through, and then new users maybe won't be quite as useful as, let's say, and again, you won't actually be able to see your resurrected in this specific chart because we didn't have very many as an example here. You can see we had, let's take out our new users. And you can see that we didn't actually have any recently, but you would be able to pull through your resurrected, and then you would add in another segment which was specifically for your reactivated. And you could take a look at the comparisons between the two of them. You can also take a look at, for example, your resurrected users and have a look at the journeys, the retention rates, and have a look at the personas and the stickiness, maybe even the engagement matrix, so that you can try to start to understand what is causing those users to actually end up being either resurrected or reactivated. Again, you might want to take a look at, for example, your resurrected users and group them by your UTM campaigns. So then you would be able to see, and if I just take out those, you see what the UTM campaigns might be. So your winter socials, fall pushes, etc. Anything that you're really sending campaigns either through emails or social media or organic. So anything really that you're looking to track for bringing users back. You can then filter by your cohort of your resurrected or your reactivated users and see which of your which of your campaigns is really bringing back the highest volume of users. For more helpful tips and tricks on Amplitude, we do recommend that you join the Amplitude Slack community channel. And you can also reach out to us directly on Magnusson Analytica, and you can even schedule time directly with us for a free consultation.